Dr. Sivasegaram, welcome to SSA Talks, and thanks for agreeing to talk with us today. Your professional learning and expertise is largely in the field of engineering, but you have also over the years written very much on the Sri Lankan conflict. How did you come to write about the conflict, and how were you influenced by Marxist thinking in your early days?
Well, my interest in social matters came much before I thought of a profession, and the national question has been before us for a very long time, and during the last 4 decades it had been the main issue. So it is there, and you cannot ignore it. I come from a Federal Party family, and I gave up on the Federal Party when they joined the UNP government in 1965. This is partly because I had social reformist and slightly center-left kind of inclinations at that time. And the other was that I was annoyed by the failure of the Federal Party to be open about their dealings with the UNP. Then it took a couple of years more for me to move to the left. And that happened when I was in England. And that was the time of the Vietnam War. And in fact, I used to go on anti-war demonstrations in Britain. And as far as Marxism is concerned, Marxism is about social justice. So invariably, you know, if one is thinking about national question, among other things, there is nothing other than Marxism which will.
And you were in England for studies as well as lecturing. You went there for studies, and
I was at Imperial College. I was doing my postgraduate studies at Imperial College. I was at Imperial College.
Talking about the conflict, Dr. Sivasegaram, how would you sort of analyze the conflict and its fundamental underlying causes? What do you think are the main causes?
Firstly, we have to look at the problem in terms of nationalities. It's not a single Tamil question. I would consider the Muslims and the hill country Tamils as distinct nationalities, distinct from the Tamil nationality. And there are problems which are specific to them. And as far as the national question is concerned, like everywhere else, the issues aggravated by group interests. Now you can, it's business rivalries, and then jockeying for position under the colonial rule. Then later on, the middle classes, the aspiring middle classes seeking positions in government services, etc. So these are the things, you know, which aggravate the issues. But then where do the workers and peasants fit in? What interests of theirs has been served by any of these conflicts? But it's still possible to stir up emotion, get people worked sentimental about their identity and so on. So that has happened. And discrimination was a major factor, both real and imagined. And then repression by the state, and then the wrong kind of reaction by the minority leaders. There's a certain amount of paranoia, and as well as fear of persecution. All these things exist. So these are real issues you have to address, but it's not something which comes from a genuine problem of the masses, but certain group interests impose themselves on the whole society, and people react as a community. So, but it's not something continuous. It comes and goes.
You are influenced largely by leftist or Marxist thinking, and class-based analysis is very much part of leftist thinking. How important is this kind of analysis, a class-based analysis, to understanding our conflict today?
Well, class-based analysis holds class and class struggle as fundamental, but that is not to exclude other matters. So essentially, a class-based approach looks at how class fits into class and class interests fit into these differences. And the issues of identity, which are brought forward in all kinds of situations, ultimately serve the elite interests, not the broad public, but the vast masses can be utilized. So it's only by bringing in class and class interests that we can identify the vested interests which are behind, and chauvinism and narrow nationalism are not so much interested in social justice. They are interested in particular group interests, and they use their populations behind them, the majority or the minority sections, and they are pushing for their own interests. Now, if you don't look at these things from a class angle, you will miss important dimensions. So it's by looking at what underlies these issues that you can get there. Now, despite all nationalism, whether it is narrow nationalism or chauvinism, what underlies all this is certain group interests. These groups are not interested in solving the problem. Very often they want to propagate the problem and aggravate it so that they can make political gain. So how do you break this? So it is by looking at the problem from a class perspective and bringing in dimensions which are normally not recognized that we can go deeper into the subject. So it's class is an important dimension as long as we are living in class society, and it penetrates everything.
Nationalism also has played or continues to play a very defining role in our conflict and our discussions. And you've raised some interesting thoughts and arguments in your books. One is that you once argued that on the one hand, nationalism in the final analysis is a meaningless thing, but also you also argued that accepting man as who he is means respecting national consciousness. Dr. Sivasegaram, can you explain what you meant by this?
Nationalism is both contextual and contrite, but it is there. So particular situations bring it into focus and we can't ignore it. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to analyze problems from a nationalist perspective, but we have to recognize it. So if there are grievances which are based on national identity, if oppression is based on nationalism, struggle against is based on nationalism, we have to take into account. And nationalism itself has been a liberating force historically. In fact, under colonialism, it played a very positive role. But inherent to it is also a negative aspect, and even fascism is inherent to. So nationalism has both positive and negative features. So it is by emphasizing the positive aspects of nationalism and fighting for the rights of people who are oppressed on the basis of nationalism, we are able to advance the cause of justice. But on the other hand, if we are going to pander to nationalism of any kind, even of the oppressed, which can take a very, very narrow outlook, then I think we while supporting national liberation struggles, by taking up the cause of oppressed nationalities, we also should be very careful that these things are not pandering to any kind of chauvinism or narrow nationalist thinking.
And how do you sort of grapple with this dilemma, Doctor? I mean, how do you seek to struggle with these narrow nationalisms of both entities, the Tamil community as well as the...
Well, it's not easy. The thing is now, the left was in a very strong position where it could have handled it. Now, the very subjective outlook of the two major left parties actually destroyed their credibility. In fact, not only did they lose their credibility among the minorities, ultimately they lost their credibility among the Sinhalese also. So it's a matter of being able to take a stand, a principled stand, and also it's something which only the left can do, explain the position of different nationalities to each other. Now, nationalists are not interested in doing that. So it's only the left which can do that. So nationalism can be overcome not by denouncing it, but by addressing the issues, the genuine issues which are there. And respecting people's religious feelings and defending the right to religion. Marx also had to be very cautious about where religion can be used as an oppressive tool. Same thing with any kind of identity. So the leftists, even when they are not strong, have a very important role to play as a moderating influence on society, and also by exposing the class nature of the forces which are behind nationalism. They can awaken the people at the right time, because the nationalists cannot solve ultimately the genuine issues of the people, the economic and other problems. They can't address it. So the Marxists, by maintaining their integrity, they have to wait their turn. Now, this is not the time yet, because we have gone through a war. So, but what has the war solved?
Central to this nationalist framing of the conflict is also the language of self-determination. And parties have used the slogan for a very long time, ever since the early 50s. But you have, in a sense, critiqued this new formulation of internal self-determination used by certain parties. What's your take on that?
Language, I think it's overemphasized. Actually, the language was never the problem.
The language is self-determination.
Yeah, self-determination is
yes.
important.
Yeah.
Now, language was made the prime issue, whereas it was just only a device to distract attention. Now, self-determination is something which the Federal Party never spoke of. They talk about federation, but never about self-determination. It was only after 1974, and particularly 1976, when they made this Elam Declaration, they talked about self-determination. To them, there was no difference between self-determination and secession. But self-determination was not meant to encourage secession. The concept of self-determination was introduced by Lenin purely to make sure that nationalities could live together as a voluntary union of nations, rather than under repressive forces. So by giving this right to self-determination, or rather giving the right to secession, it's like the right to divorce. I think a couple who know that they can part company when they like have a more stable relationship than any kind of relationship under duress. So Lenin's intention of talking about self-determination was to make sure that people have mutual trust and they can live together as nations. Now, the Tamil nationalists